Hey guys, Victor here, and today we're going to be doing a deck profile on Mathmech, which is the deck that has been featured on this channel before, and is still something that I think has a lot of potential in it. It's just, unfortunately, in the current climate of the format, Kashtira, Dimension Shifter, Bestials are literally running rampant everywhere, so this deck has a lot of, trouble actually dealing with those types of cards. But, if the Forbidden and Limited list that will eventually come out actually addresses those issues, this deck has really high potential to actually become one of the top tier threats, even with circular being limited, because it's still capable of OTKing pretty much out of nowhere. And much like other, Cyberse decks, it's literally hand trap turbo plus full combo. So with that out of the way, let's just jump straight into the deck profile. So we're of course going to be kicking off the monster lineup with Mathmech Circular. This card is literally the heart and soul of the deck. It does everything. It sends your Sigmas for cost into the graveyard. It special summons itself if a Cyberse or a Mathmech monster is summoned while this card's on the field. It searches for a Mathmech spell or a trap. It's insane. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you stand on it, you can only play one because it is currently limited, but that's honestly perfectly fine just because we play so many cards that give us easy access to it, whether it's through our spells or our extra deck, whatever. Like, this card is not a hard card to find at all. And if you just open it the hard way, like the good Yu-Gi-Oh player I know you are, you're probably going to win the game. Then, to go with our Mathmech Circular, we're going to be playing 3 Mathmech Diameter. So what this card does is when it's normal summoned, it special summons a Mathmech from the grave, or not a Mathmech, but any level 4 Cyberse monster from your graveyard, which, pretty much everything in this deck is a level 4 Cyberse monster, so that's great for you. The only thing is it negates the effects, but that doesn't matter because the real power from Diameter comes from its secondary effect, which is the turn that this card is used as an exceed material, that monster basically becomes an Omni Negate. And that's really huge in helping you ensure that your plays are actually going to be able to go off, whether you're setting up your unbreakable board or you're just trying to go for the OTK. So yeah, this card, unreal with what he can do. Then to go with those, you're going to be playing 2 Mathmech Sigma. So this is going to be the main card that you're sending off of Mathmech Circular, because what it does is when this card is in the grave or in your hand and you have nothing in your extra monster zone, you can special summon this card. That's a hard once per turn, but free extenders are always good. The only thing is, after you've used this effect, this card does banish itself if it leaves the field. So just be aware of that. And if you can, try to exceed with this, which means you're probably almost always going to want to exceed with this. Because if you exceed with Sigma, that effect no longer applies. It'll go back into the graveyard, and then you can reuse the effect on your next turn. So yeah, 2 Mathmech Sigma, 2 is fine. I don't really feel like you need 3. And to go with those, we have 2 Mathmech Addition and 2 Mathmech Subtraction. Literally the exact same thing, basically. Subtraction lowers a monster's attack on the field by 1,000 to summon itself. Addition boosts by 1,000 to summon itself. Pretty straightforward. Next, we're playing Mathmech Nabla and Mathmech Multiplication. So these cards are pretty cool. They basically give you another avenue to try and OTK your opponent without having to go into update gem or access code, which is like the more traditional way. Because what this one does is you can target a Cyberse monster in your extra monster zone, and then it can attack twice. And what this one does is it doubles the attack of a monster in the extra monster zone. So the inclusion of these cards does allow you to play around and have a little bit more flexibility with your plays if you really want to. And then they also have like a couple additional effects. Like this one can modify levels, which doesn't really come up all that often. And then this one, you contribute 1 Cyberse monster to special summon 1 Cyberse monster from your deck. So pretty cool with what they can do, but you don't really want the deck to revolve around these. So yeah, that's fine. Just 1 and 1. Next, speaking of extenders, we have 2 Sakitamas. This card, you just reveal it, and then you can have an additional normal summon essentially of a spirit monster. So you just reveal this, then normal summon it. Pretty straightforward. They're level 4, which has a lot of synergy with the deck. Then we're also playing 3 Parallel Exceed. So whenever you go for like a link 1, which is typically going to be like Linguriboh or just whatever, you reveal this card from your hand, it special summons itself, then it summons another copy of itself, and they become level 4, which in turn gets you to alembertian, which in turn searches you for pretty much whatever you may need. Card is solid, and even like for your weaker hands, right, this can still make you like a bagooska or something, or a dweller, depending on what deck you're playing against, and if your hand is pretty subpar or really good, whatever the situation arises for, this gives you enough fodder to go for it. So card is insane. And then after that, we just have like basically a bunch of hand traps. So because like I said, this is a very hand trap heavy deck, because you have a bunch of 1-card starters, so it's pretty much like a no-brainer to play this many. We're playing 3 Droll and Lockbird, probably the best hand trap in the format. It stops so many degenerate decks. And even like against like the top tiers, right, it's still really solid. Like, it's good against Dragon Link. Depending on the start with Kashtira, it's really good against that. It's good against like all the rogue decks like Tear Element, Dark World, Synchron, Vanadium. The list goes on and on and on. This card is just unreal. Then we're playing 2 Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill. Since Dimension Shifter and Kashtira are, like really prevalent, something like Effect Veiler honestly isn't all that great. You prefer to play Ghost Mourner just because it doesn't have to go to graveyard for cost. So, 2 Ghost Mourners. Then you play 2 Ash Blossom. It's okay. It's not the greatest right now, but there are some matches where it's really strong. You just side the third one in case you run into like a matchup where it actually is like, worthwhile. Then you play 2 Nibiru. I think it's honestly really underrated, and there's a lot of people that are just straight up not respecting Nibiru right now. So you'll be able to catch a lot of people off guard, especially game 1. And then for the final monster, we play 1 Dogoran. It doesn't matter what kaiju you play, but Dogoran, maybe Juzukiru are probably the best ones. And with that, that's the monster lineup, and now we can move on to the spell and trap portion of the deck. So compared to the monster lineup, the spell and trap lineup is really small, but that's perfectly fine because they literally do everything that you'd want them to do. So with that, we're going to be playing 3 Small World. It searches out literally any monster card in this deck, which is really valuable. Only 2 Cynet Mining. You should probably be playing 3, but I opted to play just 2 because there's some other cards that I actually really wanted to try out in this deck. Plus, getting hit by like Ash Blossom on your Cynet Mining never feels good because you basically just -1 yourself, and a lot of the times I can just straight up end your turn, so I don't really want to focus too much on a card like Cynet Mining, but it's still really solid, like, don't get me wrong. Then we're playing 2 Triple Tactics Thrust. So Droll Lockbird is kind of everywhere right now, and this deck, much like most other decks, kind of crumbles to it. So we're going to be using this in order to, actually have access to the really powerful cards, such as Superfactorial, which, this is a Mathmech deck, so it's not a spoiler that we're playing it. It's pretty obvious. It's like, if you get hit by Droll, you just activate Triple Tactics Thrust, you set your Superfactorial, and then you just try to get as many monsters in the graveyard as possible in order to make it live on your opponent's turn. Or, if you get hit by a Bestial, you can search out cards such as Triple Tactics Talent, which in turn allows you to either draw 2 cards or rip your opponent's hand apart. So, you have like a lot of really cool choices with that. Like, you can search out your Small Worlds or your Cynet Minings as well. It's honestly up to you in whatever situation comes up. But yeah, card is solid. Then we're playing 1 Mathmech Equation. This is going to be Reborn for any Mathmech monster in your graveyard. You just special summon it, and then it gains 1,000 attack until the end of this turn. Pretty straightforward. And then for the final spell, 1 Call by the Grave, because if we're going first, we do not want to get hit by Droll and Lockbird or Dimension Shifter. So even though this card is only at 1, we have to take the chance and hope that we can draw it in those cases where we do get hit by it. And that's it for the spells. And then for the traps, you're just playing the 2 Infinite Impermanence and the 1 Mathmech Superfactorial. Really straightforward, but every single card serves their purpose pretty much perfectly. And with that, we can now finally move on to the extra deck portion. Now, when it comes to the extra deck, you guys have probably seen it a million times before, but that doesn't mean you can't try out something new. And there are some pretty new cards in here, at least in my opinion. I don't know. I haven't really checked any, Mathmech deck profiles recently, but to me, they're new. So they're new. Even though these cards have been out for a while. You're going to be playing the 1 Linguriboh, like I said. This is going to be the main combo that you use in order to get your Parallel Exceeds off. Just because you make this, you go Parallel Exceed, summon it to the zone it points to, special summon the second one, go for your rank 4, blah, blah, blah. And it's really helpful for helping you break boards as well, because there are times where your opponent just has like a couple trap cards, or it offers you protection from Infinite Impermanence if you're going first. And, cards just really, really nice like that. And to go with that, we're going to be playing 1 Link Decoder. So what this card does is when it's used as link material for a monster with 2300 attack or more, it's able to special summon itself back from the grave, but it banishes it. But you banish it when it leaves the field. So it's just more free extension and fodder for your other plays. And then the other added bonus is that if you're getting hit by Nightmare Crypt or Ibli, for example, which I know Ibli is already like a really easy card for this deck to out with because we play Linguriboh, but if you don't want to use your Linguriboh early at all, you're free to make Link Decoder and just try and get more fodder so you can try to OTK your opponent for trying to floodgate you. So, options. Then for the Link 2s, we only play the 1 Splash Mage, Reborn for a Cyberse monster. Then we play Update Jammer, which you're going to be using with your Access Code Talker in order to make it attack twice and attack per game. Pretty straightforward stuff so far. And then after that, we're playing 2 Transcode Talkers. Now, this card is another Reborn. And then this is typically going to be the combo piece that you combine with your update jammers to go into Access Code Talker. And honestly, this is probably the most cuttable card. And by cuttable, I mean you can play 1. You have to play at least 1 for sure. But I like playing 2 just because of the added security, because you're not always going to be guaranteed to OTK your opponent. Like sometimes they might just have like a bestial or something, or I don't know. You never know what your opponent may have. So if you fail to OTK them on 1 turn, having the second one as like a backup is a solid choice. But you don't have to. It's just a nice option to have. And then we have Decode, Talker, Heatsoul, because let's face it, not every single hand is going to be fantastic. So you need to rely on something like Heatsoul to be able to draw you cards, whether it's on your turn or your opponent's turn for 1,000 life points. And typically, or hopefully, those cards are like hand traps, which you're going to be able to use to stun your opponent long enough in order for you to be able to OTK your opponent on your turn. But yeah, really valuable card for those hands that are somewhat lackluster, if I'm being honest. And then for the link 4, we're playing Access Code Talker. Not much to say. This is basically the boss monster of the deck, because whenever this card drops, you're going for game every single time, especially after you summon it with your transcode, update, jammer, OTK play, which is very easy to do. Very hard to mess up, if I'm being brutally honest. Then for the final link monster, we're playing 1 Firewall, Dragon, Dark Fluid, Neo, Tempest, Terahertz. So this card is really cool with what it can do, because when it negates any monster effects activated by your opponent during the battle phase. So that's your battle phase and your opponent's battle phase. But the main power from Terahertz comes from its other effect, which is a quick effect, by the way, where you can send 1 Cyberse monster from your deck or extra deck to the graveyard. And if you do, this card gains the attribute of that monster plus 2,500 attack. So since it's able to send from the deck or extra deck, you can send either from your main deck, your multiplication if you want to boost this monster's attack even higher. Just because, so it'll be like, what is it? So it becomes 5,500, then you multiply that by 2 with multiplication, so it becomes 1,100. You can give it 2 attacks if you send Nabla, or we're playing 2 solid monsters in the extra deck as well, which help us negate cards. We're playing 1 Mereologic aggregator and 1 Cyberse desavewurm. So this is a spell and trap negate, and then this is effect railer. So you have options of what you can send. So you have defensive and offensive options, which means that this card is honestly really powerful, just being able to end on it turn 1 if you're going first. And you typically combine that, of course, with your Mathmech superfactorial, and the game's pretty much like a wrap at that point, because your opponent is going to be having a lot of trouble actually breaking through the board. But yeah, card's good, I'm not gonna lie. And then for the other Exceed monsters, you play number 41 Bagooska, the terribly tired tapir. You play Primathmech, laplacian, loop a card out of your opponent's hand, then send 1 card on their field to the graveyard. And then on top of that, it's usually going to be summoned with Diameter, which means it's going to be an Omni Negate. And yeah, things get out of hand really fast if you pair this with your Firewall Dragon, because you're just going to have so many negates, so much interruption, things of that nature. And then for the final monster, of course, you got to end it with Primathmech, alembertian. This is going to be, your main searcher for any Mathmech card. And that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed the deck profile. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya!